Economic Mastery episode 9. This week we'll be practicing questions from the odd but out variant XAT. Then you have 5 sentences given. Then 4 of them will form a coherent paragraph when phrased appropriately, and 1 of them is not a paragraph. Okay. Let's go through the questions. The 5 questions that I will solve in terms of practice in this video. And then there are 5 questions that will be provided for your self-practice, the answer key for which will be present in the description box below. So the first one. Wealth, on the other hand, is buried in the ground or wasted on unproductive activities. So when you have a phrase like on the other hand, indicates some sort of comparison is happening. So wealth is being compared to something. This cannot be your starting sentence. Capitalism distinguishes capital from mere wealth. Okay. So the idea of comparison happening, capital and wealth are being compared. A crucial part of the modern capitalist economy was the emergence of a new ethic, according to which profit ought to be reinvested in production. Okay. See, this is capitalist economy. This is talking of capitalist economy and new ethic, new idea, new philosophy, according to which profit should be reinvested in production. It should not be whittled away. It should not be used up in unproductive activities. Okay. Pharaoh, who pours resources into non-productive pyramid, is not a capitalist. Okay. Now, Pharaoh is the rulers of Egypt, and this is a dated term. You don't have pharaohs in this modern day age. Okay. Final sentence: capital consists of money, goods, and resources that are invested in. Now, see, clearly we can make a pair of 5-1. These are definitions. Capital consists of money, goods, resources that are invested in production. Wealth, on the other hand, is buried in the ground or wasted in unproductive activities. So comparison is being made. 5 and 1 will make an absolutely wonderful pair. Now, because we are comparing capital and wealth, which is the statement that starts with stating that these are different, is 2. So we'll have 2, 5, 1. We'll have 2, 5, 1 as 3 sentences which are definitely in that order. Now, we are again a pharaoh who pours resources into non-productive pyramid is not a capitalist and a crucial part of modern capitalistic economy. Given that capital and wealth were being distinguished, not really a capitalist economy, the appropriate order of sentences will be 2, 5, 1, 4, and the odd one out here will be 3. I have this tendency, especially in the practice phase. In the initial phase, people have this habit of making pairs or finding tens, matching, and all that wonderful idea, and marking odd one out randomly. But in the initial phase, when you're practicing, invest more time. Whatever you have identified as the odd one out, for the other 4, try to come up with an order. What that does is it gives you greater confidence in your answer, and this skill development helps you in paragraphs, also helps you in odd one out. For this question, the sentences should be ordered as 2, 5, 1, 4, and 3 will be the odd one. Let us go to the next question. Her secretariat, the special assistants in various ministries, were all considered adequate to maintain and run the system. Somebody is being referred to as her secretariat. Her secretariat. Okay. Which person is being referred? We'll see. The fear of Misa also brought about industrial peace. There is some act, some law, some policy that is named as Misa. And Misa will have, most likely it will have some sort of acronym. Misa is not a person's name because a person's name will only have the first letter capitalized. Here, this is all the letters capitalized. So this should most likely have some sort of acronym, as in some sort of full form, this some sort of acronym. This at least placed industrialists, though not the trade unions, which in any case were simply too afraid to do anything. Oh, sorry. This at least pleased industrialists, though not the trade unions, which in any case were simply afraid to do anything. Okay. So we are also referring to something here. This, even when the Bonus Act was scrapped, making it no more obligatory for employers to pay a compulsory bonus when they were losing money, trade unions by and large kept quiet. The CPI made some noise, but only in the newspapers. Okay. even when the Bonus Act was scrapped. Again, this refers to a law now, making it no more obligatory for employees to pay a compulsory bonus when they were losing money. Trade unions, by and large, kept quiet. The CPI made some noise, but only in the newspapers. So they only made a sound so that it appears as if they're making a sound. There wasn't any real opposition. There weren't any protests. There weren't any sort of. There weren't any actionable things done at their end to make it to register protest. Okay. No strike was entertained, and when there was one, the police intervened to settle it. And settle is within quotation marks, which is to say the author is implying sarcasm here. Settle is not settling, settle is threatening the trade union workers into falling in line and working. Okay. Okay. So I'm seeing pairwise, I can see 5 and 3 will make a pair. No strike was entertained, and when there was one, the police intervened to settle. This at least pleased industrialists, though not the trade unions, which in any case were simply too afraid to do anything. And then 4 will come after this. Even when the Bonus Act was scrapped, trade unions by and large kept quiet. So were simply too afraid to do anything. The fact that trade unions were submissive and did not really actively engage themselves in protesting, that idea is being further strengthened by the fourth statement. So 5, 3, 4 should be a pair. Now, see, 1 is anyway very, very weird. I can make an order of 2, 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, 3, 4, and 1 being the odd one out for the simple reason. Her secretariat, her, I don't know who her is being referred to, the special assistants in various ministries and raw. Various ministries, government agencies, and raw. This is external knowledge. We know raw is a government body, government arm. So were all considered adequate to maintain and run the system. Which system? We don't know again. So what is statement 1 referring to? All those references are unclear. On the other hand, when you look at these order of sentences, the fear of Misa also brought about industry. So strike was entertained, and when there was one, the police intervened to settle it. This, the police intervention, at least pleased industrialists, though not the trade unions, which in any case were simply too afraid to do anything. Even when the Bonus Act was scrapped, making it no more obligatory for employees to pay a compulsory bonus when they were losing money, trade unions by and large kept quiet. The CPI is a political party. Again, my external knowledge, CPI is a political party that claims to be representing the working class. So it has root in Marxism and in socialism. But again, CPI made some noise. Within the context of these lines, CPI, somebody made some noise, but only in the newspapers, which is to say they gave interviews, but there wasn't any real actionable protest happening from there. 2, 5, 3, 4 makes a wonderful order. 1 has to be the odd one. Okay. Third question. The copy beamed by foreign news agencies was screened and found unfavorable, even to the friendly countries like the Soviet Union was killed. Okay. See, when you read this sentence, forget odd one out for the time. Meaning of the sentence, if you have to derive or understand. The copy beamed by foreign news agencies was screened, and anything found unfavorable was killed. Essentially, we are talking of censoring happening here. The copy beamed by foreign news agencies. What we are talking of is censoring happening of news agencies. Okay? And unfavorable, even to friendly countries like Soviet Union. So Soviet Union is not the primary country which is doing the censoring. There has to be somebody else who is doing the censoring. And not only are they uncensoring stuff that is unfavorable to them, also to their allies. And one of their allies is Soviet Union. Okay. JP's Everyman and Prajaniti, George Fernandez, Pratipaksh Lata, and Pilu Modi's March of India had to suspend publication. Okay. This is in line with the earlier idea of censoring happening. In line of censoring happening, the idea that was introduced in one. Officials were posted in the offices of news agencies so that they could cross out objectionable material at source. Again, the idea of censoring is getting reinforced. So this is wonderful. And then 3 and 2 seem like a good pair. Officials are posted in offices of news agencies. And then JP's Everyman and Prajaniti, George Fernandez's Pratipakshlata. I don't know the correct pronunciation for this, but I'm guessing it is Pratipakshlata. Pratipakshta. Pratipakshta, I know what it means, but some newspaper agency, some newspaper publisher, and Pillu Modi's March of India had to suspend publication because there was censoring happening. The Jana Sangh's motherland and organizers were banned and their offices sealed. Okay. So see, I now see 3 and 4 will also make a good pair, 3 and 2 will also make a good pair. So I will either have 3 to 4, 3, 4, 2. One of these two orders will have. Now, she repeatedly said, who is the she being referenced here? We don't know. She repeatedly said that the countries which had been criticizing India were the same which had supported General Yahya's military rule in Pakistan and his suppression of Bangladesh. One, we don't know who she here is referring to. Additionally, so far we had all the first four statements. So I could also have 3, 1, 4, 2. I could also have 3, 1, 2, 4. Lots of possible orders are getting generated. Lots of possible orders are getting generated. But regardless of what order I take, I'm fairly certain 5 should not be it. I'm fairly certain 5 should not be. There is no way to distinguish between 2 and 4, what will come first. And I think 3, 1 makes more sense. 3, 1 makes more sense because people were placed in news agencies to cross out objectionable material. Then anything found unfavorable was killed. Then 2 examples of how it was killed. We had motherlander organizers are banned and officers sealed, and the other newspaper publications had to suspend publication. So 3142 or 3124, either of these could be it. Now, usually in writing style, what would happen is first you would mention the greater atrocity, and then also see 7 people were killed and 50 people were injured by the bomb blast. You will always mention the greater atrocity first. So here, ideally, it should be 3142, according to me, because these were banned and their offices sealed. Here, they had to only suspend publication. So it's not like a lifetime ban. It's not like their businesses have shut down. Their businesses have been suspended. Here, there is a lifetime ban. So if I had to do a parajumble with the sentences, I would say 3142. But in either case, definitely the odd one out has to be 5. Next, traveling by tempo on the busy road, you could get off and walk just 1 block. Okay. Traveling by tempo. Now, tempo is a very, very Indian term. Auto rickshaws, automobile and rickshaw combined, which made auto rickshaw, is also colloquially known as tempo in India. So, traveling by tempo on the busy main road, you get off and walk just 1 block. So, perhaps this is talking of taking a journey to some place, reaching some destination. I now draw my attention to Buddha Vihar in Lucknow that has for a long time been connected with Dalit activities, both religiously and politically. Okay. This could perhaps be the destination being referenced. Chindrapal Mitra converted to Buddhism at the age of 25, and Ishwar Sevat at the age of, okay, seems like there is some missing. Let's say at the age of 29, related to the question. No, I don't have to enter the question. This is not a video. So at the age of 29, I don't know what that number is. I will do a check later on after I'm done solving all my questions and come back and correct this number because this could perhaps be religiously important. I don't remember. Okay. Chandrapal Mitra converted to Buddhism at the age of 25 and Ishwar Sevak at the age of 29. For the time being, I'm saying at the age of 29. In this small vihar, located in the old part of Lucknow, Ambedkar and his writings have a central role to play. Clearly, 2 and 4 are connected. Passing a cloth shop on the right, you will come to a small, calm, green square surrounded by red buildings. Okay. 1 and 5, they are definitely linked. 1 and 5, they are definitely linked. And 2 and 4, they are definitely linked. Now the order has to be which set of sentences should come first. 3 is definitely out. 3 is talking of converting to Buddhism. We don't know where how Buddhism figures into it. What should come first? Whether 1-5 should come first or 2-4 should come first. You will only mention about your journey to a destination once that destination has been mentioned beforehand. So in order to have that destination mentioned beforehand, the precise order of the remaining sentences should be 2, 4, 1, 5, and 3 will be an odd one. Okay. So this should be the answer. Let me just go ahead and check what is the precise age at which Ishwar Sevak took up Buddhism. Okay, I am back after the break, and some Google search, internet history search tells me this is not 29, but I was very close with my guess. It was 30. It's 30. So Chandrapal Mitra converted to Buddhism at the age of 25 and Ishwar Sevak at the age of 30. This is the number. Somehow the question had escaped scrutiny earlier. Let's see. Last question for me to practice, and after that, I will be talking of how odd one out questions are framed, how they are created, and how you can perhaps see linkages are made and everything. 5 sentences related to a topic are given below. 4 of them can be put together to form a meaningful and we've already read these. There are, however, fairly clear differences between the two bell curves. So there is some mention of bell curves earlier, only then this line would make sense. If we look at the curve for population growth, we see that the rise began much earlier in the 18th century, and the decrease also began much earlier. Global growth over the past 3 centuries can be pictured as a bell curve with a very high peak. When it comes to growth rate of per capita output, things are more complicated. Okay. Now I see this 4 is very linked to 2. This 4 is very easily linked with 2 because what we're talking of is the idea of when it comes to growth per rate of capita. Essentially, prior to this, we were somewhere else. And what is the curve that was mentioned earlier? It was population growth. Then we're also saying much earlier, began much earlier. So comparison is definitely happening. Things are more complicated. Okay. In regard to both population growth and per capita output, the pace gradually accelerated over the course of the 18th and 19th centuries, especially the 20th. Accelerated over the course of 18th and 19th century, and especially the 20th. Here is where the pace became very accelerated and is now most likely returning to much lower levels for the remainder of the 21st century. Okay. Again, very much like one of the earlier examples, 2 things are being compared. So when you start off, ideally you should be mentioning the 2 things in one statement and then looking at the comparison happening. So I'm going 5, 2, and 4. This will seem like a good 4 is not a good 4 is not a good one. I got one more idea. See, 4 tells me things are more complicated. But 1 here tells me fairly clear differences between the 2 bell curves. So if there are fairly clear differences between the 2 bell curves, and when it comes to growth rate of per capita, additionally, things are more complicated. This is essentially telling me that the point where, as in difference wise, it is not very clear. But when you look at statement two, the rise began much earlier. So comparison is very apparent. And the decrease also began much earlier. So comparison is very apparent. So 2 followed by 4, 2 followed by 4 will not make sense. Okay. In fact, 5, 1, 2 would be a very good way of presenting it. Population growth and per capita output growth. The pace gradually accelerated, blah, blah. There are, however, fairly clear differences between the two curves. And 2 in itself tells me the difference. The rise began earlier for population growth and the decline also began earlier for population growth. So 5, 1, 2 looks like a good set of sentences. Now, between 3 and 4, we'd have to choose. The only reason I think 4 should be out, 4 is sort of introducing a new idea which is in contradiction with what was mentioned earlier, because we're saying things are more complicated, but the earlier sentence was fairly clear differences. And that difference is also stated. The start point and the end point were very, very clearly visible earlier and earlier. That was mentioned. So I'd say an acceptable order of sentences would be something like this. 3 coming right at the beginning. Global growth over the past 3 centuries can be pictured as a bell curve with a very high peak. In regard to both population growth and per capita output growth, the pace gradually accelerated over the course of the 18th and 19th centuries, and especially the 20th, and is now most likely returning to much lower levels for the remainder of the 21st century. There are, however, fairly clear differences between the two bell curves. The two bell curves being referenced are population growth and per capita output. If we look at the curve for population growth, we see that the rise began much earlier in the 18th century, and decrease also began much earlier. Yes, this order seems fine. And 4 is going to be bad. The rise and fall, we can potentially talk. Now, when it comes to odd one out sentences, odd one out questions, usually how they are framed or questions that you get is some article, some newspaper write-up you have, several paragraphs. How questions are usually framed is they'll pick up a set of sentences from some paragraph, and then from the same article, they'll pick up another sentence. The same article, they'll pick up another sentence which is not directly following this. Now, easy questions would be from a completely different section of the article, very, very far apart, and it is very easy to identify where it is different from. But very often it could be close also. For instance, if I had to predict the order of this article, this would be right at the beginning, global growth, blah, and blah. Then in the second paragraph, why the population growth began to rise much earlier, and then it started to decline much earlier. And then why? Once you had the reason, then you would have one line something like, when it comes to population growth rate of per capita, things are more complicated. So the why of the change or rise and decline of growth rate of per capita output, that is more complicated. But as long as you're using terms, people were reading only on the surface, not necessarily understanding the sentences. They would see growth rate of per capita, growth rate of per capita. So, and it is something that I did myself. So, when you're practicing questions, or let's say if you are practicing questions from multiple sources and everything, if you find the reason wonderful, great. If you don't find the reason wonderful, and you think that you have a stronger reason, a very good way to check this, Google the sentence. Google whatever sentence, some sentences, whatever is available. You'll most likely land up at an article. And within that article, you will see how the context has been framed, how it is going. It has two advantages. One, you would be more certain that the answer is correct. Second, it will also force you into some reading, which is always preferred whenever you are trying to improve your VARC skills. Okay, now for the part when I give you practice questions. This is the first question. Okay, next question now. Okay, next question now. Next question now. And the final question. And that's it. These are the 5 questions. The answers for these 5 questions, will be present in the description box. If any of the questions are tricky, or you find difficulty in solving them, or if you feel the answer given is not in line with what you expected to be, you can engage in the activity I just told you. You can Google these lines, because they've been taken from articles and everything. Otherwise, you can also ask at within the comment section. Then we will post the explanation if there is a need or demand for that. That will be all for this week's Maverick Mastery videos. Hopefully you learned something. See you again next week. Goodbye.